The old bridge on 5th Street cast long shadows as the sun began to set. Under that bridge, a man named Ray had made his home for the past 3 years. He wasn't always homeless. Once he had a job at the local factory, a small apartment, and even a cat named Whiskers. But life has a way of taking unexpected turns. Tonight was colder than usual. Ray wrapped his worn blanket tighter around his shoulders and settled into his corner. Most people walked by without noticing him. That's how it had been for years now. He was invisible. Sometimes that hurt more than the cold or the hunger. But tonight, being invisible would change everything. Around midnight, when the streets were nearly empty, a black car pulled up near the bridge. Ray wouldn't have paid much attention. Cops often patrolled this area, except this particular officer was Lieutenant Parker, the man whose face was plastered across town billboards as the hero of Westport. The newspapers loved him. The mayor called him the city's finest. Everyone knew Lieutenant Parker. Ray watched as the police officer stepped out of his car and looked around. He seemed nervous, checking over his shoulder every few seconds. Then another car arrived. A red sports car that Ray had seen before. It belonged to Jimmy the Snake, a man who sold drugs to desperate kids in the park where Ray sometimes collected bottles. "You're late," Lieutenant Parker said, his voice carrying in the quiet night. "Had to be careful," the Snake replied. "You hear about the new task force?" The lieutenant laughed. "Who do you think is heading it?" They both chuckled, and the Snake handed him a thick envelope. Ray couldn't believe his eyes. The city's most respected police officer was taking money from one of the most dangerous drug dealers in Westport. "Next shipment's coming Tuesday," the Snake said. "Same arrangement." "Make sure your boys stay out of the north side this week," Parker replied, tucking the envelope inside his jacket. "We've got a community outreach program there. Can't have any incidents." After they left, Ray sat frozen in his spot. His hands trembled, but not from the cold. What he had just seen wasn't something you could unsee. What should he do? Who would believe him? He was just a homeless man, and Parker was a decorated officer with friends in high places. The next day, Ray couldn't stop thinking about what he'd witnessed. He watched the local kids walk to school along paths where the Snake's dealers worked. He remembered the young woman who had died of an overdose just last month, right across from his spot. Her name was Tina. She had sometimes shared her sandwich with Ray. For the next week, Ray began paying closer attention. He noticed that every Tuesday night, the same meeting happened. Sometimes other people would show up too. Business owners, other officers, even someone who looked like they worked at City Hall. In an old notebook he had found in the trash, Ray began writing down everything: dates, times, descriptions of the cars, snippets of conversation he could hear. He wasn't sure why he was doing this. Who would care about the words of someone society had forgotten? One night, as rain poured down, Ray huddled under his plastic tarp, trying to keep his notebook dry. Lieutenant Parker's meeting had been particularly tense. There was shouting, and Ray heard something about taking care of problems permanently. As he sat there, soaked and cold, Ray made a decision. Someone needed to know the truth, but speaking up would be dangerous. Parker had power, connections, and a reputation to protect. Ray had nothing except the truth written in his soggy notebook. Tomorrow, he decided he would go to the Westport Tribune. There was a reporter there, a woman named Becky Chen, who wrote stories about corruption and seemed to care about justice. Maybe she would listen. Maybe she wouldn't laugh him out of her office. As Ray finally drifted off to sleep, he clutched his notebook to his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something that had long been missing: purpose. Morning came too quickly. Ray hadn't slept much, his mind racing with thoughts about what he was about to do. His stomach growled as he folded his blanket and tucked it into his backpack along with his precious notebook. Today would be different. Today, someone might finally listen to him. The walk to the Westport Tribune office took almost an hour. Every step made Ray question himself. Who was he to challenge Lieutenant Parker? The man had friends everywhere, his photo hung in shop windows, and people stopped him on the street to shake his hand. Meanwhile, those same people crossed to the other side of the road when they saw Ray coming. Outside the newspaper building, Ray hesitated. His clothes were dirty. He hadn't showered in days. Maybe this was a mistake. As he turned to leave, a young woman rushed out the door, nearly colliding with him. "Sorry," she said, actually looking at him. Not through him like most people did. Ray recognized her from her photo in the paper. "Are you Becky Chen, the reporter?" Surprise flashed across her face. "Yes. Can I help you with something?" The words caught in his throat. How do you tell someone that their town hero is actually working with criminals? "I have information. Important information." Becky checked her watch. "I'm late for a meeting, but—" "Please," Ray said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's about Lieutenant Parker." Her expression changed. For the past month, the Tribune had been investigating police response times in different neighborhoods. The wealthy areas got immediate help, while places like Ray's Bridge were ignored. Becky had written 3 articles about it, and each time, Lieutenant Parker had publicly dismissed her concerns. "Come inside," she said. The newspaper office was warm and smelled like coffee. Ray felt out of place among the desks and computers and busy people. A few staff members gave him strange looks as Becky led him to a small meeting room. "Wait here," she said. "I'll be right back." Ray sat nervously, clutching his notebook. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Had she called the police? Was Parker on his way to arrest him? The door opened and Becky returned with 2 cups of coffee and a sandwich. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, placing them in front of him. The kindness almost broke him. When was the last time someone had offered him food without expecting something in return? "Now," she said, sitting across from him. "What about Lieutenant Parker?" For the next hour, Ray told her everything. About the meetings under the bridge. About the snake and the envelope of money. About the other people who came and went. As he spoke, he showed her his notebook with its careful record of dates and times and snippets of conversations. Becky said little, taking notes of her own. When he finished, she stared at him for a long moment. "Do you know what you're saying? What this could mean?" Ray nodded. "I know nobody will believe me. I'm just some homeless guy and he's—" "I believe you," she interrupted. Her words hung in the air between them. Ray blinked back unexpected tears. "You do? Your details match things I've been hearing. But hearing isn't proof." She tapped his notebook. "This is a start, but we need more." "More? Like what?" "Like pictures, recordings." Becky leaned forward. "The next time they meet, would you be willing to document it?" Fear coursed through Ray. If Parker caught him spying, it would be dangerous. "Very," she agreed. "I won't lie to you. If what you're saying is true, Parker won't go down easily. People like him rarely do." Ray thought about Tina, who had died from the drugs Parker was helping to distribute. About the kids in the neighborhood who had no idea their protector was working with the very people who endangered them. "If I help you," Ray asked, "what happens next?" Becky's expression was serious. "Best case, we expose corruption and save lives. Worst case, Parker finds out someone's talking." The weight of her words settled on Ray's shoulders. He had been invisible for so long. Now, being seen might get him killed. "I'll do it," he said finally. "Someone has to." Little did he know that across town, Lieutenant Parker was already asking questions about a homeless man seen watching his meetings. The back room of the Westport Tribune felt like another world to Ray. Becky had brought him through the employee entrance to avoid curious stares. Now he sat awkwardly on a plastic chair, surrounded by stacks of old newspapers as she rummaged through a cabinet. "Here," she said, handing him a small black device. "It's a voice recorder. Simple to use, just press this button to start and this one to stop." Ray turned it over in his hands. It was smaller than his palm and lighter than he expected. "And this," she continued, giving him a prepaid phone, "is so we can stay in touch. My number's already saved in it." The sudden technology in his hands made Ray nervous. He'd owned a phone years ago, before losing his job, but nothing this new. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Becky assured him. She showed him how to use both devices, patient when he fumbled with the buttons. "Keep them hidden. If Parker spots either one, we're in trouble." Ray slipped them into his coat pocket, still uncertain. "What if no one believes us? Even with recordings?" Becky's expression turned serious. "That's why we need to be thorough. One recording won't be enough. We need a pattern, multiple meetings, different people. Enough that it can't be dismissed as a misunderstanding." She pulled out a map of the city, and they marked the spots where Ray had seen Parker meeting with the snake and others. As they worked, Becky's colleague Tom entered the room with 2 cups of coffee. "You must be Ray," he said, offering one to him. "Becky told me what you're doing." Brave. The word felt strange. Ray hadn't thought of himself as brave in a long time. Tom sat down with them. "I've been digging into some public records. Over the past 3 years, drug arrests in Westport are down 40%. "That's good, right?" Ray asked. "Not when overdoses are up 60%, Tom replied grimly. "It's like certain dealers are being protected." The 3 of them talked late into the afternoon. By the time Ray left, the sky was turning orange. Becky had offered him a place to stay. Her cousin ran a shelter downtown and could give him a bed without questions, but Ray declined. He needed to be under his bridge tonight. Tuesday was coming, and with it, another meeting. The next day dragged with nervous anticipation. Ray kept checking the devices in his pocket, terrified of losing them. When evening finally arrived, he positioned himself in his usual spot, but angled differently, hidden deeper in the shadows. At 11:30, Parker's car pulled up. The snake arrived minutes later. Ray's heart pounded as he pressed the record button, just as Becky had shown him. "We've got a problem," Parker said, his voice tense. "Someone's been asking questions." The snake lit a cigarette. "What kind of questions?" "About our arrangement. About the missing evidence from the Henderson bust." Ray held his breath. The Henderson bust had been big news, a warehouse raid that supposedly took thousands of dollars of drugs off the street. Parker had been hailed as a hero. "You said that was handled," the snake growled. "It was. It is." Parker ran a hand through his hair. "But the stuff we kept back, someone's noticed it's hitting the streets." The snake stepped closer to Parker. "Find out who's talking and shut them up, or our friends won't be happy." The meeting ended quickly after that. Ray waited until both cars were gone before stopping the recording. His hands shook as he slipped away from the bridge, afraid to stay in his usual spot. If Parker was looking for someone watching him, Ray's regular sleeping place wasn't safe anymore. He walked for hours, finally finding shelter in an abandoned car wash across town. Sleep didn't come easily. When his new phone buzzed at 8 a.m., he nearly dropped it in surprise. "Ray, it's Becky. Are you okay? Did you get anything?" "I got it," he whispered. "Parker and the snake. They talked about missing evidence from a drug bust. They kept drugs back, Becky. They're selling them." The line went quiet. That's bigger than I expected. Can you come in?" Ray glanced around nervously. "Not yet. I think Parker's suspicious. He knows someone's watching. I had to sleep somewhere else last night." "Where are you now?" "Old car wash on Brewer Street." "Stay there," Becky said. "I'll come to you." An hour later, Becky's blue sedan pulled up, but she wasn't alone. Tom was with her, and another person Ray didn't recognize, an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. "This is Frank," Becky explained as they huddled inside the dusty car wash office. "He used to be a district attorney. He tried to investigate Parker 3 years ago, but couldn't make anything stick." Frank extended his hand to Ray. "What you're doing takes real courage." As they listened to Ray's recording, Frank's expression darkened. "The Henderson case. I always suspected something was off. Evidence numbers didn't match what was logged." "What do we do next?" Ray asked. "We build the case," Frank replied. "One recording isn't enough, but it's a start." None of them noticed the police cruiser slowly driving by outside or the officer inside taking pictures of Becky's car. For the first time in years, Ray was part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't just invisible anymore, he mattered. But as he looked at his new allies, he couldn't shake the feeling that Parker was already closing in on them. Frank's apartment became their headquarters. It was small but clean, with bookshelves lining every wall. For Ray, who had slept under a bridge for 3 years, it felt like a palace. Frank had insisted Ray stay with him. It wasn't safe on the streets anymore, not with Parker looking for him. "We need more than just one recording," Frank explained as they gathered around his kitchen table. "We need to show a pattern." Becky spread out a map of the city. Based on Ray's notes, Parker meets with different people in different locations. The snake is just one of his contacts. Tom pointed to several marked spots. "I've been tracking overdose reports. They spike in these areas right after Parker's meetings." Ray studied the map, recognizing streets where he'd once walked freely. Now those same streets felt dangerous. How do we get more evidence without Parker spotting me? Frank pulled out a small camera. This can be hidden in your coat button. It'll capture video of whatever's in front of you. Ray took it nervously. Won't they search for this kind of thing? They might, Becky admitted. But we don't have many options. For the next 2 weeks, Ray became someone new, not just a homeless man, but an investigator. He wore different clothes borrowed from Frank, sometimes a hat or fake glasses. He moved to new locations each day, always watching, listening, recording. The evidence grew. Parker meeting with a shop owner who paid for special protection. Parker and another officer exchanging packages in a parking garage. Parker warning the snake about an upcoming police raid. Each new recording made Ray both prouder and more frightened. They were building a case, but the danger was growing too. One evening, as Ray was returning to Frank's apartment, he noticed a police car parked across the street. His heart nearly stopped. Had they found him? He ducked into an alley and called Becky. "Don't go back to Frank's," she said immediately. "They might be watching it. Go to the address I'm about to text you. My friend Donna runs a community center there. Tell her I sent you." Ray walked for nearly an hour, constantly looking over his shoulder. The community center was an old brick building with a small garden out front. Inside, kids were playing basketball while adults worked in a computer lab. Donna was a tall woman with kind eyes. "Becky called ahead," she said quietly, leading him to a back office. "You can stay in our volunteer room tonight." That night, as Ray tried to sleep on a narrow cot, his phone buzzed with a message from Becky. "Turn on the news." The community center had a small TV in the common room. Ray turned it on to see Lieutenant Parker's face filling the screen. The news anchor's voice was solemn. Lieutenant Parker held a press conference today addressing rumors of an investigation into police corruption. He strongly denied all allegations and suggested they were being spread by drug addicts and criminals trying to undermine police authority. The camera cut to Parker at a podium. "These baseless accusations are coming from unreliable sources, people with criminal records or drug problems who can't be trusted. I've dedicated my life to protecting the city, and I won't let my reputation be destroyed by lies." Ray felt sick. Parker was getting ahead of the story, painting anyone who might speak against him as untrustworthy. People would believe him. Why would they trust a homeless man over the city's most decorated officer? His phone buzzed again. It was Tom. "Don't worry. This means he's scared. We must be getting close to something big." The next message was from Frank. "My contact at the DA's office says they found something strange in the evidence locker. Several bags of seized drugs have been replaced with powdered sugar. They're doing an internal investigation." Ray stared at the messages, his heart pounding. Things were moving fast now, perhaps too fast. If Parker was publicly defending himself, what else might he do to protect his secrets? Outside the community center, a car engine started. Ray peeked through the blinds to see a dark sedan parked across the street, its headlights off but engine running. Someone was watching. He'd spent years being invisible, forgotten by society. Now, when he finally had people who believed in him, when he was finally doing something important, he was being hunted. Ray moved away from the window and checked that the door was locked. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but also new chances to expose the truth. For tonight, at least, he was safe, he hoped. Ray barely slept that night. Every noise made him jump. A door closing, footsteps in the hallway, the rumble of the heating system. By morning, his eyes were red and his nerves shut. The dark sedan was gone, but that didn't mean he was safe. Donna brought him coffee and toast. "Rough night?" He nodded, grateful for the warm mug in his hands. "Thanks for letting me stay." "Any friend of Becky's is welcome here," she said, sitting across from him. "But I should warn you. One of our volunteers mentioned seeing police asking questions at the shelter where you used to stop for meals." Ray's stomach tightened. They were looking for him. His phone buzzed, a message from Becky, meeting at noon. "New location. Tom will pick you up." True to his word, Tom arrived in his beat-up pickup truck. "Keep your head down," he advised as Ray climbed in. "Parker's got officers looking for you all over town." "Why?" Ray asked. "He doesn't even know my name." Tom's expression was grim. Someone at the paper talked. "They know we're working on a story about police corruption. They know it involves you." The new meeting place was a fishing cabin on the lake, about 20 miles outside of town. Frank was already there with Becky when they arrived. "We need to move fast," Frank said without preamble. "Parker's getting desperate." Becky opened her laptop. "I've been piecing together what we have. The recordings, the photos, the evidence logs Tom got from his contact in records. It's enough to write the story, but..." "But what?" Ray asked. "But Parker's already working to discredit you," she explained. "He's telling people you're just a drug addict with a grudge against police. We need something he can't explain away." Frank spread some papers on the table. "The Henderson drug bust, that's the key. According to official reports, they seized 12 kilos of drugs. But the evidence log only shows 8 checked in, 4 kilos vanished. And those 4 kilos are worth about $500,000 on the street," Tom added. Ray thought about the conversation he'd recorded between Parker and the snake. They mentioned the Henderson bust. Said someone noticed the missing drugs hitting the streets. Becky nodded excitedly. "Exactly. If we can connect those street drugs directly to the Henderson evidence, we've got him." "How do we do that?" Ray asked. "Every drug shipment has its own chemical signature," Frank explained. "Like a fingerprint. If we can get a sample of what's being sold now and compare it to what was logged in evidence." A loud crack interrupted him. Everyone froze. "Was that a gunshot?" Tom whispered. Frank moved to the window, carefully peering out. "No, a car backfiring, but someone's coming up the drive." They watched as a police cruiser stopped outside the cabin. A young officer stepped out, looking around nervously. "It's Officer Mills," Frank said, surprised. "He's new to the force." "Is he one of Parker's?" Becky asked. "I don't think so. He seems like a good kid." Frank went to the door. The others listened as he greeted the officer. "Sorry to intrude, sir," Mills said, his voice shaking slightly. "I remembered you used to fish out here. I needed to talk to you, somewhere private." Frank invited him in. Mills looked startled to see the others, especially Ray. "You're the homeless man they're looking for," he said. Ray tensed, ready to run, but Mills raised his hands. "I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here because I can't be part of this anymore." He pulled out his phone and showed them photos, evidence bags being switched, money changing hands, Parker meeting with known criminals. "I joined the force to help people," Mills said, his voice breaking. "But what they're doing, it's wrong. People are dying because of these drugs. Kids are dying." Frank put a hand on the young officer's shoulder. "Telling the truth takes courage." Mills looked at Ray. "They said you were just some junkie making up stories, but you're really trying to stop this, aren't you?" Before Ray could answer, Mills' radio crackled. "All units, be advised. Suspects in the corruption investigation may be headed toward the lake area. Approach with caution. Suspects should be considered dangerous." Mills turned pale. "They tracked my car. They must have been following me. We have to go. Now." Outside, they could hear the distant wail of sirens. Their time had run out. "There's a back trail through the woods," Frank said, grabbing his keys. "We can take my truck." As they rushed to gather their evidence, Ray looked at Officer Mills. For the first time, he realized that not all cops were like Parker. Some still believed in doing what was right, no matter the cost. The sirens grew louder. They had minutes, maybe seconds, to escape, but now they had something they didn't have before, proof from inside the police department itself. If they could just get away, the truth would finally come out. Frank's old truck bounced over the rough forest trail, branches scraping against the windows. Ray gripped the door handle, trying not to think about the police cars racing toward the cabin they just left. "They'll set up roadblocks on the main roads," Officer Mills warned from the backseat, where he sat squeezed between Tom and Becky. "We need to stay off the highway." Frank nodded grimly, taking a sharp turn onto an even narrower path. "This old logging road connects to County Route 16. If we can make it there, we might have a chance." Ray looked back through the rear window. No flashing lights yet. But how long before Parker realized they'd slipped away? How long before he figured out which way they'd gone? "We need to get the evidence to someone who can't be bought," Becky said, clutching her laptop bag that contained all their recordings and photos. "Someone outside Parker's reach." "The state police?" Tom suggested. Mills shook his head. Parker has friends there too. We need the FBI. The truck hit a deep pothole, sending everyone bouncing in their seats. Ray's thoughts raced faster than the vehicle. Just a week ago, he'd been invisible, sleeping under a bridge. Now he was running from the police with evidence of corruption. Life could change so quickly. I have a cousin in the FBI, Frank said. She works out of the field office in the Capitol. That's about 3 hours from here, if we can make it that far. 3 hours is a long time when every cop in the county is looking for us, Tom pointed out. They fell silent as Frank navigated the difficult terrain. Finally, the truck emerged onto a paved road, County Route 16, empty in both directions. Which way? Frank asked. East, Mills said firmly. They'll expect us to head west toward the Capitol. Frank hesitated only a moment before turning east. They drove in tense silence, everyone scanning for police cars. They passed a gas station, a small diner, a farm supply store. Normal places filled with normal people who had no idea of the corruption poisoning their town. After 20 minutes, Mills spoke up. Pull in here. Here was a rundown motel called the Sleepy Pine, its neon sign flickering weakly in the afternoon sun. We can't stop, Tom protested. We need to keep moving. We need to change vehicles, Mills explained. They'll have my car and Frank's truck description by now. And we need to call for help. The motel owner barely looked up from his television when Frank paid cash for 2 rooms. They gathered in one, pulling the curtains shut against the fading daylight. Becky opened her laptop. I'm going to write up everything we have. If we get caught, at least the story will get out. I'll call my cousin, Frank said, pulling out his phone. Ray sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. What happens if we make it? If the FBI believes us and arrests Parker? The question hung in the air. None of them had thought that far ahead. Justice happens, Mills said finally. Parker and his network go to prison. The drugs stop flowing so freely. Maybe some lives get saved. And what happens to me? Ray asked quietly. No one answered right away. Then Becky looked up from her laptop. You become the man who brought down the most corrupt cop in Westport's history, she said. You become a hero. A hero? The word didn't feel right. Heroes were people like Officer Mills, who risked their careers to do the right thing. Not people like Ray, who just happened to be in the right place because they had nowhere else to go. Frank's phone call lasted nearly 20 minutes. When he hung up, his expression was cautiously hopeful. My cousin is sending agents to meet us, 2 hours away, at a truck stop on Highway 80. 2 hours, Tom repeated. That's a long drive with every cop looking for us. Not every cop, Mills corrected. He pulled out his phone and started typing. There are good officers who don't know what Parker's been doing. Once they hear the truth, his phone chimed with responses almost immediately. See, not alone. Outside, the sky darkened as evening approached. Ray peered through the curtains at the nearly empty parking lot. A single car was pulling in, a news van with the Westport Tribune logo on its side. Someone's here from your newspaper, he told Becky. She looked up surprised. I didn't call anyone. They all moved to the window, watching as a man climbed out of the van. Not a reporter, the building manager Ray had seen at the Tribune office. That's Pete, Becky said. But how did he know we're here? Mills' phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. It's a trap. Someone at the station tracked my phone. They know exactly where we are. As if on cue, 3 police cars rounded the corner, lights flashing. More were coming from the other direction. We're surrounded, Tom said unnecessarily. Ray felt the familiar grip of fear. But something else too, determination. They hadn't come this far to be stopped now. The evidence, he said urgently. We need to get it out, even if they catch us. Becky was already typing furiously. I'm sending everything to my editor, to Frank's cousin, to every news outlet in the state. Parker can arrest us, but he can't stop the story now. Outside, officers were taking positions around the motel. A voice on a loudspeaker called for them to come out with their hands up. Frank peered through the curtains. Parker's not out there, just regular officers. They might not know what's really happening, Mills suggested. They might think we're actually criminals. Ray watched the files uploading on Becky's computer. 89%, 90%. The truth was almost out. Whatever happened next, Parker wouldn't win, not completely. "I'll go out first," Ray said suddenly. "I'll tell them everything. Keep them busy while the files finish sending." "They won't believe you," Tom warned. "Parker's made sure of that." "Maybe not," Ray agreed. "But they'll have to listen." For years, no one had listened to Ray. No one had even seen him. But now, as he prepared to face the police waiting outside, he knew that had changed forever. Whether they arrested him or not, his voice would finally be heard. The upload reached 100%. Becky closed her laptop with a triumphant smile. "It's done," she said. "The truth is out there now." Ray took a deep breath and moved toward the door. It was time to face whatever came next. Ray stepped outside with his hands raised, the motel door closing behind him. Bright flashlights immediately blinded him. He squinted into the light, heart hammering against his ribs. "My name is Ray Wilson," he called out. "I have evidence about Lieutenant Parker and his drug operation. Get on the ground now." An officer shouted through a megaphone. Ray slowly knelt, then lay face down on the concrete. The rough surface scraped his cheek. He could hear boots approaching, the crackle of police radios. "The man in there, Officer Mills," Ray said quickly as someone grabbed his wrists. "He's one of you. He can explain everything." Cold handcuffs snapped around his wrists. Ray was hauled to his feet by two officers who wouldn't meet his eyes. They led him toward a police car, past other officers who were now approaching the motel room. From inside came shouts as Becky, Tom, Frank, and Mills were ordered out. One by one, they emerged with their hands up, just as Ray had done. "Check if they have phones or computers," ordered a heavy-set officer who seemed to be in charge. The officers began searching them. Ray watched helplessly as they took Becky's laptop. "That has all the evidence on it," Ray called out. "Don't let them destroy it." An officer shoved him into the back of a patrol car. Through the window, Ray could see Mills trying to talk to his fellow officers who were ignoring him. This was it then. Parker would win after all. As the car began to move, Ray noticed something strange. They weren't heading back toward Westport. Instead, they were driving in the opposite direction toward the Capitol. After about 20 minutes, the car pulled into an abandoned gas station. Another vehicle was waiting, a black SUV with tinted windows. The officer got out and opened Ray's door. "Change of plans," he said simply. "Someone else wants to talk to you." Fear flooded Ray's body. Was this Parker's plan all along? To get him alone, away from witnesses? The officer led him to the SUV and opened the back door. Inside sat a woman in a dark suit, her expression serious but not unkind. "Mr. Wilson," she said. "I'm Special Agent Cooper, FBI. I think you have a story to tell me." Ray stayed in disbelief as she removed his handcuffs. "How did you?" "Your friend Frank's cousin reached out," she explained. "Then we started receiving files, lots of files, from a reporter named Becky. Very interesting files about Lieutenant Parker." Hope flickered to life in Ray's chest. "What about the others?" "Becky, Tom, Frank, and Mills." "Other agents are extracting them as we speak," she assured him. "We've been investigating Parker for months, but couldn't get anyone inside his operation to talk. Until now." As they drove through the night, Ray told Agent Cooper everything, from the first time he saw Parker meeting the snake to their escape from the fishing cabin. She listened intently, occasionally asking questions but never doubting his story. "What happens now?" Ray asked when he'd finished. "Now we move quickly," she said. "Parker doesn't know we have you yet, but he will soon. We need to get arrest warrants before he can run." By morning, they had reached the FBI field office in the Capitol. Ray was given a small room with a real bed, clean clothes, and hot food. It felt strange after so long on the streets. Throughout the day, agents came and went, asking more questions, showing him photos of people they suspected were part of Parker's network. Ray identified those he recognized: the snake, the shop owners who paid for protection, the other officers who helped Parker. Late that afternoon, Agent Cooper returned with a laptop. "I thought you might want to see this," she said, opening it to a news website. The headline read, "Dora A. King, Coparestdn Massive Coroup Testing." Below was a photo of Parker being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. "They got him," Ray whispered. "They got all of them," Cooper corrected. "The snake, 3 other officers, even the deputy mayor. Your evidence broke the case wide open. The drugs from the Henderson bust that were diverted to the street, we found them in a warehouse Parker owned through a shell company." Ray sat back, overwhelmed. After 3 years of being invisible, of people walking past him like he didn't exist, he had made a difference. A real difference. "Your friends are waiting to see you," Cooper said, standing. "They're very worried about you." She led him to a conference room where Becky, Tom, and Frank waited. They rushed to him, all talking at once, relief clear on their faces. "We thought they might have gotten to you," Becky said, hugging him tightly. "What about Mills?" Ray asked, looking around. Giving his official statement, Frank explained. "He'll be here soon. The FBI is treating him as a whistleblower, not an accomplice." As they celebrated their unlikely victory, Ray found himself thinking about what would come next. He couldn't go back to living under the bridge, but he had no home, no job, nothing. As if reading his thoughts, Becky said, "The Tribune wants to run your story. The whole thing from your perspective. They're offering payment." "And the community center needs a new outreach coordinator," Frank added. "Someone who understands what it's like to be on the streets. Donna suggested you." Ray looked at them in disbelief. "You think I could do that? After everything you've been through?" Tom said, "I think you could do anything." 6 months later, Ray stood at the back of a crowded courtroom as the judge read out Parker's sentence: 20 years for corruption, drug trafficking, and obstruction of justice. The snake and the others received similar sentences. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters clustered around Becky, whose series on the case had won a national award. Ray slipped away quietly. He didn't need the attention. His new apartment was small but clean, with a view of the park. On his desk sat the framed front page of the Tribune from the day the story broke. Sometimes he still couldn't believe how much had changed. His phone buzzed, a message from the community center. A new family had arrived needing help. Ray grabbed his coat and headed out. Once he had been invisible. Now he saw the invisible people others missed, and he made sure they were heard. As he walked down the street, a police car passed by. The officer inside nodded respectfully to Ray. It was Mills, recently promoted. The city wasn't perfect. There were still problems to solve, people who needed help. But it was better than before. Sometimes, Ray thought, that's all you can ask for, to leave a place better than you found it. And sometimes, the person no one sees is the one who can see everything.